certified as a permaculture designer by Bill Mollison in 1993. That was the same year that he started his New Forest Farm in southwestern Wisconsin, where he's restored 160 acres of scorched earth agricultural land into a stunningly beautiful perennial agriculture farm that embraces the structure and functions of the native oak ecosystems in eastern woodlands. I was fortunate to be able to tour the farm last year during the Society of Ecological Restoration meeting. I don't remember if Mark remembers what a slow student I was. Like some of you,
I believe I said kindergarten.
like some of you, I have seen many examples of restoration from agriculture, projects to convert agricultural lands back into something resembling natural areas like savannas or prairies. But I haven't had the opportunity to see as much restoration in agriculture, or to use his compelling phrase, and the one that I highly recommend in his book, restoration agriculture. Restoration agriculture. And I'm sure he'll be giving you a preview, but it's a wonderful book to read that talks about how he has mimicked oak savanna ecosystems in doing agriculture. On the tour, Mark emphasized how he nudges natural processes to do the work for him. And he introduced his work with the phrase, stun. Sheer, total, utter neglect. Which it turns out also owes something to the One Straw Revolution author who uses the term do nothing agriculture. It seemed so simple, but I kept forgetting. When he talked about dealing with the legacy of pesticide contamination, I asked, but what do you do about it? Nothing, he smiled. When he talked about planting nut-bearing trees like chestnuts and oaks, I said, but don't you have to add mycorrhizae to get them to establish? And he said, nope. So his approach might be surprising for folks from either the restoration or the agriculture communities, but his presentation today is guaranteed to get you thinking and talking about this approach. And whatever you think of his approach, you might like to talk about it further over his most excellent hard cider. I have a sample of it here, which may be raffled off or given away at some later point to a lucky soul.
Let's hope it doesn't blow up.
So I had not been in the loop and heard of Mark and his restoration agriculture or his forest agriculture enterprises and related businesses before last year. But Mark, I have to tell you that there's at least one person in this room who's long been a fan of yours. A former classmate of mine I ran into in the market last week was so excited to tell me that this is the first time that he's come to this meeting, and that he's doing it specifically for another chance to see you because he saw a talk of yours in 2001 and has been waiting ever since to see you again.
Oh, we got a rubber suit for this weirdo?
And I'm guessing that after this talk, a number of other folks will feel the same about waiting for your next talk. So thank you very much.
Who is that person? Raise your hand. Now he's not going to do it. Okay.
He doesn't want to.
I got the clip on.
Oh, you have one.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. It's always bizarre to get like the first thing in the morning, because like half of you are probably asleep. Half of you, the coffee is probably working on the lower end. The other guys, the gluten intolerant people couldn't go through this food bar and eat anything, so you're starving. And then the people who ate only the fruit are going to have this like wicked sugar spike and they're going to crash. But at least you're not in the after lunch coma. Part of how I kind of roll in the kind of teaching presenting style that I have, I intend on purpose to be somewhat provocative and maybe even inflammatory. If you kind of hold for a second and think about this thing, if we really want to do restoration, ecological restoration, if we really want to create resilient systems on this beautiful, beautiful planet of ours, we have to stop seeing the world through our concepts and start actually observing what actually is going on. And that seems, well, that's stupid, that's so similar. An observation is something that you can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, measure with instruments, derive through tests. And if I give you the protocol of how to observe this phenomenon, you can observe the same thing, you can observe the same thing. We may describe it differently, but it's the same phenomenon that we're observing. Where the concept is merely an intellectual idea that we have stuck in our mind that we apply on reality. And then we insist that reality comply with our idea. When it doesn't, we have a problem. And the idea that I'll use is the word orchard. Most people in Michigan are familiar with orchards. 100% of all of the problems in an orchard are caused by the concept of orchard. You have this stupid idea of what an orchard should be. And when pests and diseases do what they do, and plants live and grow and die, and fertility does what it does, we say, oh, there's a problem and we have to correct it. That was caused by having a stupid idea. What if we start looking at nature, letting nature be nature, and figure out how to work with it? So that's kind of how it starts. So this presentation, I hope, for you guys, believe it or not, it's like dog poop on your shoes. When you come to the house and you realize that there's dog poop on your shoes, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to deal with it either right away or later on down the line. And if you don't deal with what we're going to talk about in this presentation today, if you don't deal with it now, you're going to have to deal with it later. Because even if you wipe your feet off really good, you're going to walk into the house and track it through the rugs. Then you're going to have to deal with it. Well, then you go ahead and deal with it, even you shampoo the rugs and scrub all the floors, there's still going to be that residual odor and it will not go away. So the core issues of humanity will not go away, and you're going to have to deal with them, so let's just do it today. I love this place. It's a fantastically beautiful planet. Everywhere I've been almost all around the world, basically everywhere in South America these days. From the tundra in the far north, beautiful, beautiful place. No matter where we go on this planet is just seething with life. There are no conditions on this planet within which life can't survive. There's some really harsh conditions, like subsea hydrothermal vents and all that kind of stuff, but life survives on this planet, persists. It is incredibly, incredibly resilient. The boreal forests, some of my favorite areas. Further south into the temperate zones, the tropics, high water regimes, low water regimes, extremely arid. There's still life there, it's still persisting. The model of resilience on planet Earth is here. It's all around us. We don't have to invent anything, we don't have to create anything. That pattern was established for us eons ago. 6,000 years ago, 4 billion years ago, depending on what books you read, it doesn't really matter. Life thrives on this planet. Even out here, there's life out there. My favorite, of course, are the savanna biome. Kind of widely spaced trees or brushy, brushy patches with grasses and flowers all through it. One of the things, actually both of these photographs are from Michigan. I did that on purpose. What's fascinating about the savanna biome is the savanna is the biome that supports more mammal biomass than any other biome on the planet. So if we are indeed mammals, and if indeed many of us eat mammals, it probably would behoove us to design our agricultural systems after the savanna. So who, I bet you there's a dozen of you guys in here. What was the dominant grazing animal right here in Michigan before people got here? Come on, you guys. Mastodon. Before people got here. People. These are the elephant savannas of North America. So if you can just look in your mind's eye to like this National Geographic movie of the savannah where we see it seething with animals. That is the system that supports more mammals than any other system on the planet. And it just so happens to be one of the most critically endangered habitats on our continent and around the world. Mammoths were more northern grassland, open steppe, tundra kind of animals. And then further south, I don't think so. They probably weren't in the Colombian mammoth here because they were more swamp dwelling. Man, they have swamp elephants in Florida. For real, instead of going on these little plastic boats and watch this thing go weird, and you get the measles. Stupid. So why do I show this? Restoration. We're here, we're all about restoration. This was the river in my backyard when I grew up. The big game when we got into the car when we were little was, what color is the river today? Because it's blue, green, orange, yellow, whatever. And I don't remember you guys were, I don't think you were at war with Ohio at the time. But in '75, I think it was, when the Cuyahoga River caught on fire, and I kind of tugged on my mom's shirt, Mom, what's the big deal? Why did that make the news? That's, the Nashville River does that all the time. Isn't that what rivers do? That was all of a sudden it's dawning. It's like, what? Rivers don't catch on fire? It's not like a forest? It's not a disposal system for everything? You need something more to rivers? And what was interesting after a long series of events, including what's now called and labeled domestic terrorism, they were forced to install wastewater treatment plants. All we had to do was stop the insult, and this life came back, surged back. You can canoe in the river now, you can fish in the river, you can fall in, and the rash will only last 3 days. So I got to see firsthand kind of like one of the end zones of the industrial world that we live in. It was like factories and cities. I lived in like this triple-decker inner city down in the river, kind of like a Flint or a Detroit. My folks were working class folks. Actually, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for part of her life. And so I got to see this restoration firsthand in my backyard, that nature came back. Well, I wasn't interested in hanging out here anymore. And so I figured out how to escape. You know, first I went to school for mechanical engineering. Got a good job. The reason why is because I got a wrestling scholarship to that school, so you know, knew where my priorities were. Got a job as an engineer, hated it. Quit my job by standing up and walking out the door, and as I was driving home, I said, uh-oh, this is kind of a rash decision. Probably not going to take me back. What do I do? I went back to school. I went to Unity College in Maine, where I studied forest ecology. After I got out of Unity College in Maine, it was during the Reagan administration when I think they were executing ecologists in nonprofits as fast as possible could. And so I got a temp job, you know, doing work for environmental impact statements. Now think about this. I'm an ecologist, I'm a restorationist. I want to help make this planet a better place. And so I've got these jars of bugs that I have to look at and identify with my stupid key that makes it go all over the place and send it in the wrong direction. Identify the bug in order to say, oh, there's a critically endangered bug here that needs to be saved according to, you know, environmental laws and all that kind of stuff. So they could pull over the place, fill it in, and build the shopping mall anyways. And so I ran. I ran because I read a magazine article that said that the Homestead Act up in Alaska was broken forever. So I took off, went up to this valley. This is the view from my bedroom window. Up in the Nipassa Mountains of Alaska. You can walk a straight line from here to the Pacific Ocean, across no roads, no people's houses, nothing like that. Go across the second largest ice field on the planet, sort of thing. Really, really beautiful country. A little bit rugged to live there. So I came up there with my ecologist sentiment. How do I fit into this environment and not screw it up and still stay alive somehow? This is kind of where this whole restoration agriculture idea started to come from. And I got to watch out my front door, is this guy right here, cut every single tree on his property in order to farm. And he kept cutting and cutting. By the time I left up to here, 0 trees except for right along the riverbed. So in order for human beings to survive, I've seen it all over the place. We have to destroy natural ecosystems in order to survive, and that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I also got involved in forest activism because no one was hiring forest ecologists. I might as well go out and get in trouble, stopping clear cuts. Because this, at the time, for me, was deforestation. But once again, I started to see that, you know what, not really, because I'm aware of natural succession. These plants are coming back, these trees are going to seed in, so it may take 1,000 years. This is not deforestation because they've cut it for wood, and they're going to return it, let it eventually turn it into wood. It's not technically deforestation in my book. This, on the other hand, is. In order to grow food, annual plants specifically, we need to destroy a natural ecosystem, expose the bare dirt to plant our seeds. There are some places in the USA that have been bare black dirt for 400 years. Now, once upon a time, annual agriculture didn't really pose a problem when it was done at the village scale, family scale. Primary sources of food were wild fish and game, fruits and nuts and berries, or wild vegetation, and you had a garden plot for this, that, or the other thing. What I find fascinating, the first uses for emmer wheat, for oats, for rye, for barley, and for corn was what? beer. So the beer scale, it's not that bad. You have a little patch of corn or whatever, the stems are sweet to chew on, you got kids that are squawking. It's not that bad, but when you start to wipe out continents to do this, ecological function goes down the drain. Almost 50% of the planet's surface is in agriculture right now. 50% of the planet's surface. Now, things are argued about, climate change. Did people, cause this climate change? Arguing about who caused the CO2 level to spike in the atmosphere is like arguing over who built the fiddle when Rome burned. Okay? It's a pointless argument and it distracts us from the real things. We have really denuded 50% of the planet to grow our food. And that's, I don't think, very ecologically sound. What's happening to the resource base here? You need soil to grow these plants. The soil is blowing away in the wind. And there's this big, huge thing. This farmer right here, this guy's an award-winning sustainable farmer. I won't give his name away. He's missing the point. If you're a farmer, you're growing green things, either to sell the green things, to sell the seeds of the green things, the fruits of the green things, to feed them to animals and sell to animals. We're the photosynthesis business. He's missing the point. This is May 26th. These trees, 100 foot tall, have been green for about a month. There's a month worth of 100 feet of photosynthesis that has not been gathered. And over here, the grass, in some places, the grass is green year-round. Even in Wisconsin, it's green year-round. He's missing the point because he's got these stupid concepts. This is agriculture, this is forestry, this is pasture, or this is lawn. The concepts are limiting his perception of reality and causing more problems than they're actually curing. Some of the problems, just I got a zillion of these slides, I'm not going to show them all, but sediment. Everywhere you see red or yellow or green in the picture is agriculture in the USA. Much of it's rangeland out here. Everywhere you see red, these are USDA figures, there's a loss of topsoil of 2 millimeters per acre per year. That's a 20-yard dump truck load of topsoil every single year from every single acre that's red in this picture. You can't do that forever. Annual crops agriculture, since it started way back when, has an incredible 100%, well, 99% track record of abject failure. Every culture in every society that is dependent on annual grains and legumes for their staple foods diet has ended in collapse. Every single one except this one. Well, we're better than that. We have fertilizers and GMOs, and we're scientific, and we've got the land-grant universities that always do the right thing. Never have political problems. We're different than that. Speaking of political problems, this is my state senator. We have lively conversation. He is of the political party that doesn't believe in giving anyone a handout. You better pick yourself up by the bootstraps and make your own way, just like I did when Daddy gave me my first $5 million. I started with nothing. And yet he turns right around. This is his family farm. He gets USDA money for putting in windbreaks, grassy contour strips for terraces and drains, for riparian buffer strips, for this was his pollinator habitat. He gets all this money for it, and then lo and behold, he gets what I call a direct payment. Oh, no, they changed that with the last farm bill. There are no direct payments. It's insurance. It's the same damn thing. Come on. He plants corn, exposes the soil in a river bottom floodplain. What does the river do? It floods. It just does that. And so he gets free money. But that's different. This is an insurance program. All for a handful of seeds. For our corn, our rice, our wheat, our oats. We aren't even able to digest this stuff, okay? In the economy of nature, there are 2 organs that are required for the proper digestion of grains and legumes. One's called a crop, one's called a gizzard. We have neither. Molars are used, we have these many molars. These are used for crushing fleshy plant parts. So perhaps our diet means we should have this much fleshy green plant material. We've got canines for picking some meat off the bone, so maybe about that much meat. And then this thing is providing fruit and nuts and these incisors to cut into things to eat. We're supposed to have a beak if you're going to eat this. I don't have a beak. And the thing is, we're told, well, we have to do this. Why didn't that focus that one right there? We're told that we have to do this because we got to feed the world. We got to feed the world. We got to feed the world. I think it's 60% of all human beings go to bed at night hungry. So one, we're not feeding the world. Two, why we're not feeding the world is it takes 10 pounds of some sort of grain and legume mix to make 1 pound of beef. We have 90% more food available to us if we stop feeding these things to these things. If you're going to eat these things, don't eat them if they've eaten those things. Then the other percentage is like 85% goes for feeding livestock and for making fuel for our cars. We have so much food around that we have to ferment it and power our vehicles. Feed the world? You know, who's wanting us to do this? I'm not going to mention any names here. Right. And how many, all right, so this is a different crowd because you guys are in restoration work. You guys probably actually feel okay about your jobs. Most people don't. Most audiences I go to, there's a handful of people that raise their hands saying that they love their jobs and the work they're engaged in. You know, why is it that we're running this rat race and the rats are winning? They really are. Now, some people say, oh, but rats and those sorts of things, the rodents eat grains. If you give them a choice, they'll nibble the germ out first. It's only when they've nibbled all the germs out of a bag of corn they'll go back and start eating the endosperm in that seed. Because they're also not adapted as well as they're designed to eat that stuff. So that was, you know, this was bugging me. Why am I working so hard in a job that I hate to destroy the planet? I don't like that. I want to live in a nice, healthy, beautiful, green planet. So I stumbled into the permaculture world. And I heard on an Australian PBS show, in a beautiful, if anybody speaks Australian, I'd love you to say it out loud, you know, where Bill Mollison said that the aim is to create systems that are ecologically sound and economically profitable. And I figured that's almost like the holy grail of human beings living on planet Earth. We can design our systems, our food systems, our living systems that are ecologically sound and pay the bills. That is what I want to do. That's what I want to dedicate my life to. And permaculture, contraction of the words permanent and agriculture. So it means we're going to develop an agriculture that's permanent. Well, if we're going to do something that's permanent, what's our model? Nature. Nature's the model. It's been producing carbohydrates, proteins, and oils and biomass, you know, animal and plants and otherwise for a long time. It's the only sustainable system that we've ever encountered anywhere. It's our model. So while I went out, got myself seriously involved with debt, got a piece of farmland in Wisconsin, way out of my comfort zone. The permaculture movement was evolving on its own also. Well, I'm trying to like build my house, you know, build a cider mill business, plant all these trees, you know, picking cucumbers. I pick approximately a ton of asparagus every single year, personally myself by hand, cut it, wrap it, box it, ice it, and bring it to a warehouse for delivery. I'm too busy to pay attention to what the permaculture movement is doing because I'm doing permanent agriculture. I got these perennials in the ground. I'm permanent agriculture. And I kind of wake up, slowly dawns on me that the permaculture movement had evolved or descended or whatever into triviality and non-reality. And if that offends some permaculturists, ride with me on this, because triviality in the fact that they can focus on things like an herb spiral or a mud oven and say, this is permaculture. Now, these are like the sparkles, these little doodads, these are the details. They're not the big pattern, they're not permanent agriculture. A mud oven made out of context. This is a place in Vermont. They got rocks out of their field where they're grazing cows. They got their rocks out of their field to build a podium, pedestal, and they built this mud oven on it. They get 75 inches of rain. It doesn't matter how much you fire your mud oven, and 75 inches of rain is going to dissolve. That's out of context. That's not solving any problems. That's really not serving any good. Non-reality, the rain barrel, what a perfect example. Well, it's a great idea. Let's catch water off our roof. It really is. However, if we want to enter reality, we have to say how much rain falls, how big is our roof, how much water does that generate, how much will we need to store, how will we deliver it to the storage facility, how will we deliver it from the storage facility. So a rain barrel, even 2 rain barrels, is a design failure because it's not a design. It's slapping a couple barrels under the gutter. So a 30 by 40 house in a 1-inch rain generates about 1,000 gallons of water. It comes roaring down the tube, can't come down fast enough, the gutters spill over, the barrels overflow, it all goes down to the basement, gets the rug wet, black mold comes all over every place, the kids get lung cancer from the black mold, and because Obamacare doesn't work, they have to go down to Mexico to get medical treatment, and they come back and they can't even get educated properly in school because they're now outcasts. That's design failure number one. Well, now 3 weeks go by, and they've got to water their 6 cabbage plants out front. Half the water's evaporated. They only water 5 cabbage plants, and they're done. They're out of water again because they didn't store enough. It was not based on reality. And the thing that kind of bugs me the most isn't this part right here, because it's become a teaching modality. They'll take a permaculture course to teach other people, to take a permaculture course to teach other people, to take a permaculture course, like where does that go? Where does that go? And then this hallucination that, oh, with permaculture we don't need farms, we grow all our food in our front yards, yeah, great. 3 sunflowers, a couple of nasturtiums, and 6 cabbages will not feed you, period. That said, I think that all of these techniques and all these strategies should be done. I think that every single suburban and urban lot should have food everywhere, absolutely everywhere. One of the miracles of the small urban suburban lot is we have people right there. It's small, it's easy to manage. We have access to water, either from our swimming pool or our tap. And what we have the ability to do is, this is where we have the ability to do high intensity, high yield agriculture. What should we raise in those circumstances? We should raise our most hyper-nutritious, nutrient-dense vitamins and minerals. This is where we grow our plants, our antioxidants. This is where our vitamin supplements come from, and our food comes from farms. So, in part because of my frustration of trying to explain myself over and over again to permaculturists, I wrote this book, Restoration Agriculture, that by imitating natural ecosystems, picking out the key species that have food, feed, fuel, economic value in that system, we can go plant that on a bare black dirt cornfield. It's not a pure ecological restoration, but it's got a major keystone species in it, and I can use it to pay my bills. So what we can do with restoration agriculture is we can do agriculture. We can produce the foods, the fuels, the medicines, fibers for humanity in bulk, the staple food crops that we depend, coming from perennial ecologies. What I didn't do when I moved to the farm 20 years ago, I didn't start a nonprofit in order to beg for money, in order to do some studies and write some grants to say, oh, perennial agriculture, pipe dream of the future. And then we have to publish that study, to beg for more money, to write another paper to say that perennial agriculture is in the future, to get published, to get more money. There's like this treadmill. I actually went and did it. Okay, we put plants in the ground. Think about how crazy this must be. Moved to Wisconsin and decided, yeah, I'm going to get into the business of designing an ecology and using plants that currently right now there are no commercial cultivars for either chestnut or hazelnut that will work in Wisconsin. I'm going to do this as a business. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. We won't get into, I don't have time to get into all that. Maybe tomorrow with this. So in that book, we just outline a little process, and we've got to start right here. Absolutely have to start right here. We have to identify our biome. We know the plant communities that belong here. Go back there on the book table. There's the one with the Michigan natural communities. You read through there, what are the species that are found in those plant communities, and you pick out the ones from tall to medium to shorter to ground growing plants. Say you pick 5. Plant those. That is a truncated, abbreviated, natural plant community that belongs here. And the plants will have the best chance of surviving here are the ones that have been adapted here. Now, in case you guys weren't aware of it, Michigan was under ice not too long ago. When the ice is around, it's probably really cold. So plant communities in Michigan are adapted to that. Well, then it's been warming. I think 4 ice ages have been through, like in the past however many years since mammals have been around. So the plant communities that we have around here are incredibly resilient. They've been through 4 ice ages and global warmings. They know how to roll with this stuff. It's pretty easy. So if you're not imitating the biome, you're trying to plant something, if you have to take care of it, it doesn't belong here. That's work, that's influence. Then establish earthworks and water management. Water is a critical plant nutrient. We absolutely have to take care of that. Then we establish edible woody polycultures, and using the agroforestry practices. That's how we transition from where we are today for the future. And this particular picture was taken here on purpose. Some students came through, they did these 10-meter plot studies on our farm. And in this particular area right here, they were flipping out because when they did an analysis of the crops that were harvested off of here, we beat corn on total calories per acre. I was disappointed because we only beat it by 30%. But we beat corn yields by 30% on this little plot right here. What's also interesting about it, nutrition per acre, this was a 100% complete nutritious human diet. Everything from the fruits and the nuts and berries to the meat, the animal products, liver, etc. The one deficiency was salt. Isn't that amazing? Why do humans crave salt? Because in a normal, natural, terrestrial diet, salt is in short supply. We need salt. What's also fascinating about this picture was taken 15 years after a cornfield. This was a cornfield 15 years prior. It is now a functional oak savanna. If I walk away from it and give you guys free rein to walk around my place, you guys will all of a sudden say, "Ooh, look, oak savanna, here we are." And oh, but there's some non-natives in here, and you have all these different criteria. I'm fine with that. I'm fine if this is a degraded oak savanna. I think it's a ag-graded cornfield. Ag-graded cornfield. So in summary, this for oak savanna mimicry, this is kind of key to the whole restoration agriculture thing, is we're going to mimic our plant community. The graphic is directly from Applebaum and Haney's work in 1993, Oak Savanna Conference, EPA put them all on. Starting with the tallest plants, the Fagacy, rule. They don't call it oak savanna for nothing. Oaks are all over the place. Well, also, Fagacies have to be chestnut and beech. So if you're up in this neck of the woods up here, all along the Appalachians, beech perhaps is a good substitute. There were actually beech savannas on the western shore of Lake Michigan and Wisconsin. Chestnut existed as large forest trees when Europeans got here. However, there was evidence that there were these huge chestnut savannas, these big, wide, overgrown chestnuts with all the different animals associated with it. And of course, the oaks. If I'm going to pick one that I think I've got a reasonable chance of selling the products and making some money off of, if I'm going to pick oak that maybe has nuts every 3 or 4 years and maybe doesn't produce until it's 20 years old, not really. I'm going to pick beech that has the same problem, last year, heavy yields, and then no yields for a long period of time. Or am I going to go with something that's pretty predictable, like chestnut? All I got to do is breed my way out of light susceptibility and cold hardiness. Piece of cake. Apples is an understory. Of course, prior to Europeans' arrival, the apples were mostly the prairie crabs, smaller fruit. It was used as part of the diet. Even in the European diet, apples really weren't food. Apples are not food. They're vinegar and they're alcohol, because water is dangerous to drink. And if you drink alcohol for breakfast, it settles your stomach. Then the vinegar, of course, is a cleaning agent. It preserves your other food. And for a little while, you get the sweet juice right after you press it. Hazelnuts, one of the dominant shrubs, along with the prunuses. Wild plum was one of the dominant shrubs. Cherries, peach, apricots, nectarines, almonds, raspberries, grapes, currants, gooseberries. Do any of you guys, this is straight off of the indicator species list for oak savanna, straight off of that list. Does anybody here see any species that are represented in oak savanna? I just said it was oak savanna. So if I planted a system that has those elements in it, is it or is it not a functional oak savanna? It is not a purist restoration. And I'm willing to bet a nickel, anybody in this room, that if you try to get an oak savanna established, a functional oak savanna established, it's going to cost you a fortune. I did that at a profit because this is paying my bills along the way. And I'm also willing to sit down and talk with anybody. I think it would be a really good idea to turn all of our agricultural land back into functional savannas at a profit that supply more food and more nutrition to human beings. I think that would be a valuable thing to do. How many of you guys have, okay, don't question, I was just saying, how many of you have designs on taking over all the corn land in the USA? Okay, put together your business plan on what it costs you per acre to establish oak savanna, and I'll put together my business plan. We're buying land all over the place as fast as we can. Do exactly that because it pays the bill. Doesn't matter where you go. There are different plant communities all over the world. We imitate those and we farm them. We'll deal a lot with these tomorrow at my workshop. And so we're just reestablishing natural plant communities. We're not going back to being hunter-gatherers or pastoralist nomads. We're designing farms that are efficient to plant, maintain, harvest, with equipment. How many of you guys ate today? Okay? You ate from machines. Get over it. If you think that it's a really cool idea that the whole world goes back to these little village scale, 5-acre farm plots and everybody's happy, what's the plan to get there? And who's going to want to go along with you? If you try to get somebody working in one of these business towers downtown or in government buildings, you think they really want to go home and take care of a 5-acre plot of land and live happily ever after? I don't think so. I think that mechanized, industrial, ecological agriculture is our only future. These are all different machines that are on the market right now. Which one's German? And which one's French? Stereotypes come from somewhere. My wife is of German descent, and my grandfather was Alfred Bouvet, come down from Canada, started the Shepard farm in Vermont. Straddle harvester. It'll harvest everything from olives to coffee to raspberries, grapes, currants. This is harvesting hybrid bushes. This is hazelnuts. A sweeper, nut sweeper, picker-upperer. It picks up, almonds, walnuts, golf balls, dog food, sticks. This is the scale I'm talking about that we need to get to. We need to convert our annual agriculture into a perennial agriculture that improves the resource base. And for years, 20 years at least, I've been telling farmers in the upper Midwest, I have huge markets for hazels, huge market for hazels. They're like, if there weren't huge markets for hazels, why did the Ferrero Rocher company build an $85 million facility west of Toronto when there aren't even any hazels grown anywhere near? Because there's huge markets for hazels. The Nutella market in the USA alone is $300 million. All we have to do is put a jar on the shelf next to Nutella at a similar price break, and 1 out of 100 persons buys that, we have a $3 million business. And how many hazelnuts is that? It's approximately 18,000 acres, okay? Just to put one jar on the shelf next to Nutella for a $3 million business. Why not? Oh, let's go home and plant 3 hazelnut bushes in my backyard. That's not food. That's fun, that's play, that's great. Do it, experiment, encourage others to do so. We need to do this at scale, in a hurry, pretty soon. That's real soon. So what you end up with, 20 years later, is what used to look like this, now looks like this. And for you guys to have done something like this, it would have been an ecological restoration. Now do a per acre cost. Let's just give you somebody an average per acre cost to make a oak savanna restoration. Somebody, a number. 5,000? All right, let's use that for math because I can count by 5 fingers. If you have $5,000 an acre times 100 acres is what? $500,000? $500,000 to get that established. Is that right? And then what's the maintenance costs for 20 years? Add that up. What's the maintenance cost on an acre of oak savanna? Somebody remember, please, you guys do this. All right, $50. It's more than that. Okay? So what you're talking about is millions of dollars worth of expense, labor that yields nothing to the human food supply. Or you talk about trees, shrubs, bushes, and pines that were planted at a profit because it's now generating nursery sales. You talk about genetic improvement because we're always selecting seed from the finest cultivars that have to be fast to reproduce and have to be pest and disease-free with no care whatsoever, or else they drop out of the gene pool. It's really easy. You plant a tree in the ground, and if it produces seed in 3 years, who gets in the gene pool? The one that hasn't produced a seed yet, or the one that did produce seed? So you start to end up, by accident, select for hyperprecocity. Well, if this one over here gets all these diseases and doesn't produce any fruit or seed, and this one doesn't, who's going to get represented in the gene pool? The ones that are resistant to the disease. Now, which one, if you got 15 plants now producing that started to produce in 3 years, trees, talking like chestnut trees, this tall with nuts all over them, which one gets into the gene pool more? The one with 2 nuts or the one with 50 nuts? So you end up with hyperprecocity, pest and disease resistance, cold hardiness, and heavy yields with sheer total utter neglect just by saving the seed from the plants that perform the way you want. That's what Luther Burbank did out in California. He's a human being who has developed more food plants that are credited to his name than any other person. Notice the pattern though. What we did first is we optimized the water flow. Rainfall is critically important. We get about 30 inches of rain. Sometimes I remember both storms when that happened. The water used to gather in the waterways, concentrate, pick up speed, become erosive, and wash away and cause flash floods down in New Orleans, and you have to build another Superdome and hose out the... Anyway. Following the techniques in keyline design, which we won't have time to get into here, you basically take every valley and you split it up. You divide it up, the cultivating pattern, the road pattern, all of our utility corridors, everything now follows the water management pattern. The idea is to catch the water, slow it down, spread it out, make it thin, so we distribute it instead of concentrate it. Soak it in. We're going to need that water because we're actually producing so much plant matter is growing in there that we're actually going to use more water. We can grow things that ordinarily wouldn't grow there because they require more water than actually falls out of the sky because we're not letting the water run away. Using some of the agroforestry techniques, specifically alley cropping. If we're growing corn or vegetables, whatever you're growing, still grow your crop than planting your rows of trees. Walnuts, it's going to take you a dozen years plus before you start getting any walnuts. Well, in the meantime, you're cash flowing with your crop. This was the magic of our whole system, is that we're cash flowing with the agriculture of today while we're planting the agriculture of the future. Salad greens between cherries. Geez, how many quote-unquote orchards could we now convert and get additional production out of if we started planting alleys between trees? Aren't you guys like the second largest peach producers, the third anyways in the country, something like that? What's the primary woody crop here? The blueberries? Cherries? Anyways, lots of opportunities in Michigan. This is on our farm here. We did mostly produce. And we lived like 4.5 hours from Chicago, 4.5 hours from Minneapolis. We couldn't go to farmers market and make any money. We had to buy truckload quantity, we had to produce truckload quantities of product to ship it out. Everything is wholesale. Another picture from our farm here. There's actually a gentleman from Michigan who scolded me once at a workshop where I told people that, yeah, if you establish a chestnut orchard, you can start to net $4,000 per acre the second year. And he flipped out. No, you can't. He's got all those numbers and charts. And look what the net rate of return, internal, this thing. I'm not talking about the chestnuts. You plant the chestnuts. These are planted wide enough so that in 30 years they'll close over the alley. Well, in the meantime, I've got 30 years worth of crop on asparagus, producing a ton or so an acre every single year. When was the last time we bought organic asparagus at $6 a pound? We don't have to produce many tons of that to do okay. So as time goes on, the trees get bigger and bigger. It just so happens the asparagus lasts about 30 years. It goes into decline. Now we've got grass underneath, we can graze the animals. This is a dynamic fluid system that we're moving toward oak savanna. And animals are a critical part of the system. I never used to be into animals. I never used to be into grass. I was into trees. It's all about trees, trees, trees. Everything's got to go back to forest until I realized the magic of the savanna and the importance of animals in that system. If you're going to be planting walnut for timber, you're going to want to do some weed control, costs money. You're going to want to do some pruning, which costs money. You want to have some kind of fertilizer in there, which costs money. Or if you bring in the animals, and the animals naturally will start to rip branches off the side of your trees and rub on the trees and rub the branches off. They'll graze the grass down and they'll poop and pee all over the place. I don't know how many patties a day an adult cow, there's only 2 farmers in the room, I won't get the answer here, will I? How many patties that they poop during the day? It's 35 gallons of urine per animal per day. And the trick with silvopasture systems is you move the animal through quicker. You get them eating their grass, they eat like the first bites of the grass, they trample half of it down, look how they trample it all down, and before they get bored or before they get hungry and start really eating your trees, they're on the next place, got fresh green grass and away they go. Doesn't matter what the species are, this is Kay, the blind guard dog, she can't see a thing, and so she'll be sitting up there and she's like looking over her, and all of a sudden the cows are moving away, and all of a sudden she's like, I don't hear them anymore. She goes around and around and around looking for them, and then sits and overlooks them again. That supervisor, one who overlooks things. Anyway. As sheep are thrown into the system, we use them more as a mop-up weed control. You can see here, this is a staghorn sumac. So if you've got invasives in your savanna restoration, get the sheep in there, put them in the electronet. High density. There's like more than a few of them in there, aren't there? They're like standing shoulder to shoulder, and they have to eat everything. So they nuke it. What's fascinating about our system is that when you start to treat a savanna like a savanna, the things that are in the seed bank pop. And she was at a tour last year of whoever the Ecological Restoration Association was, and they're finding savanna species I never even heard of before that showed up. And the things that really characterized the stability of the savanna, the resilience of the savanna, was fire and periodic, episodic, abusive grazing and browsing by large herbivores. And I think the secret is randomness. Don't graze at the same time over and over and over again, because certain plants will thrive under that. The savanna was so resilient because you never knew when the bison were coming through. You're going to trample everything all to pieces. And when they did, it looked like somebody bombed it or used napalm or whatever. And imagine if you're a brushy area and the elephants come through. I've seen it in Africa. They mess things up. So abusive grazing and browsing and fire. We've used a little bit of fire, and I've got some ideas with that. I hope it would get rid of ticks. It would be really nice. And we use our ultimate mop-up crew. Any kind of fruit that falls off first has bugs in it. Pigs eat it. They digest the larvae. After we harvest, the pigs come out and they get things. And when we're picking, we don't spray anything. We don't spray anything. Why? So when we got the fruit, look, bug holes in it, throw it on the ground. If it's cosmetically inferior, who cares what it looks like if we're going to squish it in the juice? The juice is the juice, and then of course they get all the pressings in the mash. So then they come out afterwards and they get all the stuff that we threw on the ground, and once again they eat all these pest larvae for us. Great pest control, disease control. And then there's what I call free-range chickens. If you look at these savanna systems, they had ground nesting birds all over the place. Do you think ground nesting birds had problems with predators? Sure, one or two went. And the eggs, I was going to say the seeds. The eggs got eaten and stuff like that. With chickens, it took about 3 years. The first 1,000, we had maybe 90% loss of predators. The second year, we had maybe about 90% loss of predators. The third year, we only lost about half of them. The fourth year, we lost 4 birds. Because the hens that we saved in the fall to save their eggs in the spring, hatch them out, and throw the chicks underneath the mom in the springtime. Hens that have never had baby chicks that have never had a mom, chicks are cold, they go on to mom, mom's like this, but she's got her eyes out looking for all the predators, and she runs to the habitat that we've created. Bushes and vines and trees, they've got plenty of places to hide. So over a course of years, we've bred what I call Jurassic chickens. Jurassic chickens. These guys are smart and they're fast. Every day we go out, I have to call the chickens, we throw a little grain to them so they know that we're good people. When they come to us, they eat, you scoop them up, put them in the bag, and sell them something. What are they eating? You know, what are these guys eating? They're eating seeds, they're eating bugs, they're pest control, and they're weed control out of the system, and they basically cost me nothing. The point is to design a system that's designed after nature, and nature never spent a penny producing anything. So you end up with a farm that looks like this. Looks like that. Now, how many of you guys are 50 years old or younger? Okay, so of the 50-year-old and younger class, this is where I'm going weird on us for a while, okay? If you're 50 years old, that means that approximately 30% of you guys, 30% of you, 50-year-olds, were raised either in a divorced family or a single-parent family, okay? And you guys know that that's not easy. How many of you guys are like in your 30s? So in your 30s, half of you guys were raised in divorced families or by single parents. How many of you guys are in your 20s? You guys are up at 60%. Okay? So what has happened in your growing up, most of you now, if you didn't have a family that was divorced or had a single parent family, you still had trauma in your life because mom and dad didn't all get along with each other. As kids, we came out of this paradise state where we were thinking everything was groovy, and all of a sudden we get totally messed up. Our lives are totally screwed up inside. Okay? I would like to tell every single one of you that the answer, the way to convert from annual agriculture, the way to get ecological restoration done, the way to get resilient agriculture done, is not to wait for somebody else to bring it to us, not to wait for the experts, not to wait for the governments. look, those boys in DC can't even, never mind, okay? They can't solve the problems for us. What we're going to do is we're going to go with the people on the ground. The injured child inside of you wants to heal. You guys are involved in restoration work because this injury in you is now coming out into your world. We are here to heal the injured planet. That's what we're here for. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to pay our bills while we do this. And I say that it's entirely possible, absolutely entirely possible, to revegetate the whole entire planet in 15 years, to produce more food than is currently being produced right now, and have all the ecological benefits of a wild ecological system. And I think this next slide is one. So what I'm going to do here, I rarely use a script, okay? But I wanted to have a script for you guys. Oh, next, right? What we're going to do is us little guys, us injured little guys, we're going to stick together. How many different organizations we got in here? As small, little atomized little organizations, you have virtually no power. But all of us combined, we have big power. We have economic power, we have political power. What we can't do is let the myth of the rugged individual stop us from banding together for good. Think about the original 13 colonies. Do you think they liked each other? They had different beliefs, opinions, viewpoints. They even had duels with pistols. When they went against the largest military and navy on the face of the planet, did they say, well, we're rugged frontier individualists, we'll take the hits on ourselves? No, they stuck together. I think it was Sam Adams who said, we better hang together, because if we don't hang together, we will surely hang separately. So every one of you guys in this room